Time to fight fear with faith. Jody Paar is a survivor who is no longer staying silent. She and her guest will fuel you up so you too can fight fear. Uplifting and inspirational stories that will rock you to your core. We don't tiptoe around the truth, we steamroll it in a bold way. This is your life, and now is the time to start living it. Get ready for the Faith Over Fear podcast with Jody Paar. Now, welcome Jody Paar to inspire you.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Faith Over Fear. I am Jody Paar. Welcome family. I'm so excited you're here. I have an amazing guest today. Oh, I'm so excited to have her. Amy Van Slambrook is a trauma and relationship psychotherapist, a published author, a certified life coach, a consultant, and the list goes on and on and on. So I'm so honored and humbled to have my fellow world shaker here with me, Amy. Amy, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Jody. It really is my honor to be with you and to be able to serve your audience. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Amy, we always start out in kind of the dark part. So can you please share with us when you first felt fear in your life?
Yeah, I really gave this some thought, Jody, and certainly I've thought about it in my own trauma work. But the first that I remember in a really tangible and visual way is when I was 4, and I can remember having a nightmare. And I realize, of course, now it was the theme of a nightmare that I had chronically after I went through trauma. But at 4, I had watched an episode of Gilligan's Island, of all things, and it was a headhunter episode. And of course, they're hiding from the headhunters, and it's all done with a lot of laughter. But to me, it was pretty scary to someone hunting me. And so I can remember hunted and also unable to get help for myself and to get protection and to use my voice. This was before I had any trauma, so it was a bit prophetic. And I can remember just bolting into my parents' room, and flying into their bed because I was so terrified at that moment. Just that I wasn't able to get what I needed, and I wasn't able to let people know how to help me. And that after my trauma, which started at 5, was sort of the theme, because my trauma happened in my home with someone outside my family. And so it was a situation where I was kind of right under the noses of everybody who could protect me, but I had no way to connect with them. And that was the beginning of me living in silence and feeling like I couldn't use my voice in a way to get the help that I needed.
Yeah, that's for a child to go through that, it's so, it rips my heart out. It hurts my heart. And I know that there's so many adults walking around that have went through similar things as children. And that is what you help with. And we'll get into that a little bit later. So going into like being a teenager, how did that follow you? How did that haunt you?
Well, it made me incredibly self-sufficient, and I'm pretty independent to begin with. I'm a redhead, so I'm a little bit feisty and stubborn about things, but it also just made me feel even more isolated, and it drove me to a kind of perfectionism that led into an eating disorder. And I was so driven, I had to keep my 4.0. I had to be the valedictorian. I needed to accomplish all of those things, not in a conceited way at all, but because it was establishing my worthiness, and it was feeling as if that was what was expected of me. I have incredibly supportive parents. My dad was a pastor for most of my growing up and was a professor before that, very involved, very supportive. But I didn't, of course, feel like I could get what I needed from them, or that I really needed to try it all myself before I sought help. And so I dated, when I started dating when I was about 16, and went through the trauma of date rape with my first boyfriend, and again kept silent because of all that. And I know you know about the power of silence. I think we live in that isolation not only because of the shame, but also because it really twists how we remember it so that we feel somehow at fault. Like if I did something differently, if I hadn't made that stupid decision, I never would have had that happen. And the perpetrator encourages that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was you. If you had done X, Y, and Z, this never would have happened. And so we really have an incredibly deep sense of self-doubt. And so that drove me, you know, to really try to be and do all that I could at the highest level. And high school was a great time in a lot of ways, but it was also incredibly stressful. I had daily severe migraines where I'd lose part of my vision, and just had a lot of health challenges, which is pretty typical for people with chronic trauma. And they could never identify it. In the end, they, well, she's just really stressed. You know, at that point, they didn't know that that collection of symptoms is what most women with trauma start to go through: digestive issues, migraines, unexplained pain, all kinds of things. Yeah.
And that's really good because I know a lot of our listeners have children. So
Yes.
that's something that I think people definitely need to know is signs to look for trauma, especially when we are silent and we don't say anything.
Yes.
And so thank you for that, because that's very powerful in saying that. Moving on from being a teenager, did you self-medicate at all? Did you, besides the food, besides the eating disorder, because that is a form of self-medicating?
Right. No, I really didn't. I mean, if there was any medication, it was achievement, and it was just doing everything I could do to be the best that I could be.
Right.
Naturally a driven person, but it was just that felt like I was walking on that tightrope, you know, all the time. And so that starvation, because I had anorexia, was really the self-medication. If I did any of that, I did in my 20s start to use diet pills. And that was the most severe my anorexia got. They were over the counter, all natural. And they were basically legalized speed. And so I had to detox myself and went through that on my own. When the Lord kind of scooped me up,
Wow.
I was ready to start to heal. And he did that at a time when I was running as far as I could away from him. But yeah, that was in high school. I was definitely, you know, a rule follower and trying to just be as perfect as possible.
Yeah, and I want to ask you a question. I get asked this question all the time, and you probably do too, especially being a preacher's kid. Why did God let something like that happen to you at a young age? I
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have a hard time trusting God because of things maybe that happened to them in their childhood. So what could you speak to their spirit in saying, you know, why did God let this happen? And I think I already know what you're going to say, because it's probably what I always say, but I do want to know, what your answer to that is.
Well, as I've really wrestled with it, because I did, and I'm sure you did
Of
too,
course I did.
because we kind of naturally assume, well, I must have done something because God let this happen to me and he was trying to teach me a lesson. And what I learned was that, of course, God never, ever wants that to happen. Ever. He never condones it. It's something that I think in heaven maybe we'll understand more fully about when he chooses to intervene and not, but it certainly wasn't because I was deserving of it. And one of the most poignant moments of healing in that, Jody, was when I was really searching God and trying to rid myself of shame, because on an ongoing basis. And I said, you know, but why? Why did this happen if there wasn't something about me that was shameful? You know, where were you? And, you know, honey, I had to go ahead of you. I had to prepare your future for you and prepare a soft place for you to land. And there's no one else who can do that. He can
So good.
go through time and space. And it gave me such reassurance that he was taking care of me in that moment, and he'd never wish for that to happen. And yet my whole mission is that you can get treasure from your trauma.
Mm-hmm.
That it really is the best place for you to tap into what God has called you to do. And I don't know if that's close to what your amazing answer is, but that's what the Lord really showed me.
Yes, absolutely. And it's important that, our listeners and those watching know that God has had no part of evil. God does not entertain evil. He does not. That is all lies of the enemy. And
Yes.
evil still exists in our world, though. But if you go through something like what we've both been through, you got to know God's got a plan for you. And you
Yes.
are worthy and you are important, and you're going to use that story one day if you trust God in your testimony and what that is, and let go of anger. And I'm sure you know as well as I do that letting go of anger and forgiveness is key in
Yes.
healing.
Yes, 100%. And it takes time.
It does.
I've learned is that it comes in layers, that forgiveness comes in layers, and that's okay. Just because you have some anger or some residual pain come up doesn't mean that you didn't get it before, or that you undid whatever trauma work that you did. I think that our souls know when we're ready to process the next layer of forgiveness. And of course, it's never about condoning what that person did or saying it's all right. It doesn't let them off the hook. It puts them completely in God's hands to give them whatever they need, because God knows what they need.
Yes.
Better than anybody else. And he will make sure that they understand the depth of their sin against all of us who have gone through it.
Right. Absolutely. So what are two definitions that you would give, one for fear and one for trauma?
Good question. For fear, I think it's that sense that we are helpless and powerless. That there is a circumstance or a being or a presence that's much bigger than us that will overtake us, and that we'll lose ourselves in the process. That's what fear has meant for me. And it's also what's helped me fight it, when we layer faith over it. Trauma, there's so many different definitions, especially for big T or little t trauma, but it's really anything that interrupts our emotional experience and leaves us wounded. For some people, moving is a significant trauma for them. For other people, that's never going to be traumatic. But it really is about the individual's experience and how violated they feel in the process. And certainly this year has been a collective trauma. I don't know many people on the face of the planet who have not been traumatized on some level in 2020, which is the good news and the bad news, because we've all gone through it together, but everybody's experiencing it in a different way.
Yeah, that's awesome. That was an awesome answer. So I appreciate you sharing that with us and sharing your journey with us. And I always want to go out of the dark and into the light. So tell me when God got a hold of you and how your life changed.
Well, I love telling that part of the story. I accepted Christ when I was 9 for the first time. And I really had a strong walk with the Lord. I really had a strong faith up until the end of high school and into college, actually, where I was just really, God was my priority. I was outspoken about it. I got into my first toxic relationship, not only with the gentleman when I was 16, but also at 18, that really took away part of that identity and made me just become quiet again. But again, in college, I met my husband, who I'm now divorced from, and my faith was a big part of my life. But when we went through the divorce, my whole world got tipped upside down, and I started to question anything on the table. And so for 10 years after my divorce, I really, really explored everything I looked at all faiths, never anything satanic.
Right.
I just explored a lot of faith, and I wanted to come back knowing whatever I chose was what I believed and not inherited. And so I was in a really dark place with my eating disorder. I was probably about 3 weeks away from dying. I got on a scale and realized I weighed what I did when I was 9 years old, and I was
Wow.
5 at the time, actually 28 at the time. And so I was on the trajectory toward death, even though that isn't what I was consciously thinking. Unconsciously, I was certainly headed in that direction. And one morning at 5:30 a.m., and I got on the scale and had that realization, it was like God was just there. And I decided right in that moment that I wanted to live. And I started to heal. And even though I was running as far away from God as I could, as fast as I could, as hard as I could, he still had grace for me. And he still slowly brought me back to him and taught me who he really was. And so for those last, these last 20 years, he's really been pulling me back into a close, real relationship with him, to feel the Holy Spirit inside of me in a new way and more powerful way. And it is the most important thing in my life. He is my best friend. He is a real presence. And he has so much grace and love. It is incredible what we miss when we don't understand all of that, and how he wants to make life so much easier, so much better for us than we ever imagine, because we make it so hard. And he has been so healing and has taught me, even how I should be loved by a man, and what I should expect from him because of the way that he has loved me and treated me and spoiled me, and all of the things that you have when you really know God in that real way in your life. And so that is behind everything that I do, and my whole calling about finding treasure from your trauma, because that's what he's shown me. And he really is behind every bit of passion that I have, because he is so often misunderstood. And I know that from my own experience. And I just want to help people come away feeling like they've gotten to know more of God better by being with me. That would be my ultimate goal with people.
I love that. And what an ultimate goal that is, because that's what people need, and the whole running thing, I know all about that. And sometimes I get tickled because I'm like, you're trying to outrun God. Like, have you ever really sat down and thought about that? Look at how's that working out for you.
Exactly.
'Cause even when, and I think that's so important that you touched on that, Amy, because it's even when we're in our darkest times and the times when we feel so alone and we feel like he's not there, he's still there. He's still there. It's just we come to a realization of how close we can come to him, and we can give it to him. And that's where just gets chill bumps, because it's just amazing what all he'll do for you whenever you do that sacrifice, that surrender all to him.
It's beautiful. It's incredible. I know. I say he's never the one who distances,
No.
who kind of bolt. And so he's always ready and waiting. And I think, I don't know if you went through this, but for me, just understanding that I do not have to have it all together in any way, shape, or form. He doesn't need it. He will take anybody, anytime, in any shape. You don't have to be any kind of perfect. And that was hard for me to get over. But boy, I'm sure thankful for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have your bachelor's.
Yes.
So did all of that happen about the same time, or was that before? Like, did you know that's what you wanted to do? Did you know you wanted to help other people? That's where your heart was?
Right. Off and on, I felt first really called to be kind of to impact on a global level when I was 5. And then again when I was 9, and God gave me some vision around that. Then when I started my bachelor's degree, I switched between several different areas of study, and I was married at the time, and I was, working full time and in school full time, and still finished with a bachelor's in psychology.
Incredible.
Planned to get my PhD or master's right after that, but instead it was about 10 years after that when I finally did my master's degree in my 30s, and again worked full time and got my master's degree full time, and it was an extended program. And so I've always kind of done the work full time and be in school full time, and so you kind of run around with no space for anything else in life, but it does really train you well. And so then after my master's, and I knew at that point I wanted to be a therapist, and I've always wanted to be a coach since I was in my mid-20s, really, and always wanted to have an online coaching practice. And so the two are just so well blended because everything fell into place and allows me to not only do therapy, but also blend in coaching for people, which I think can really be helpful with trauma because it's such a complicated set of symptoms. And I've also done post-master's training in brain health and functional medicine because I really want to understand and to be able to help people on all levels that they're suffering and help them understand and make sense of it.
That is so beautiful. What a gift. What a gift that you have in so many areas, in so many ways. I am just completely my heart is so full for you. Like it's so full for you because I know like when we go through things and we feel like it's the end and we can't love ourselves, and it's hard for us to love ourselves. But then God says it's not who you think you are, it's who I know you are. And you shine so bright, girl. You do. And you give so much hope and inspiration to so many others that are watching. You do a lot of relationship, also trauma in
Yes.
relationships.
Yes.
So tell our listeners, if someone's going through that with their marriage, how you can help them.
Right. And first, I want to thank you. That just brings tears to my eyes
Me
because
too.
it's such a powerful, powerful story. It is remarkable, and I know that God is going to use it globally. I know that in my heart. You have that passion and strength. And I see that with you and your husband as I hear you together, and just what a power couple you are, for the Lord. So I'm so touched by that. Because learning to love ourselves is a complicated journey. And even when I'm working with couples, that's such a huge part of it. And what I find is that a lot of couples don't understand why they can't connect, why they keep having these conflicts over and over again. And they feel like they don't understand what the heck they're fighting about. They just know that they can't connect with each other and they don't understand it, or their relationship is good, but they want it to be great. They want it to be exceptional. And both of those things, ironically enough, are usually symptomatic of trauma. And so what I work to help people do and help couples do is we understand what that primary wound is for each of them. And in that primary wound is also a message of what they need. So if it's just simply saying, look, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, that message can break through any conflict. It can help reconnect. It helps the other person know, what did I do? How did I hurt them? What upset them? And it also helps us know, as the other side of that couple, what might have gotten triggered for us. And so it's really, really powerful work. And I'm going to be starting a group coaching program for couples, and also kind of some workshops for couples to try to get some more tools, because if it's one thing this pandemic has done, is it's shaken the foundation of so many marriages, and my heart just breaks because I don't want couples to end up with divorce papers in hand when they really don't need them at all. They just need to hear each other better. And so that's the process we go through together. And it is so incredible, Jody, to see couples who come in the door, you're our last hope, or we're just doing this to check the box off before we file the divorce papers, and they come out healed and in love again. And that is just, it's such an incredible blessing and so humbling.
Wow. And that gives me chills because, you know, when I met my husband, I had been through so many abusive relationships. That's all I was used to. And so I wasn't used to anybody loving me, showing me love. I just felt used and abused, and I thought that's all I deserved. And so when I met my husband and he's trying to show me love, I'm constantly fighting against that. And I had to surrender all to God. I had to realize that I had to forgive the ones who had hurt me throughout my whole life, all the way from whenever I was 18. And it was something so powerful because my husband could not understand what I was going through. And so when I wrote my book in 2018, I looked over at him, he's reading it on the airplane, and he is just bawling, crying. And he goes, it all makes sense now, because I had so much anger and hate inside of me, and I would take that out on him. So anybody who's listening or watching and you feel like Amy can help you, and that, let me just tell you, it'll change your whole marriage. And you have to let out what we block. You got to let it out. You got to quit holding on to it, because I held on to it for so long thinking that it was just going to go away, and I was hurting the one I loved the most. And so once I went through what I call breakthrough prayer, and I gave it all to God, because I was about to lose the best man I've ever met in my life. And when I did that, all those chains broke off, and I learned how to love him like he loved me. I was able to do that. But before that, I couldn't love him for the hate that was blocking that. And it was nothing he ever did. And I was cutting him, and bleeding on him, and he didn't cut me, you know? And so it's important that, you know, if your relationship is toxic, or if you're, you know, keep attracting the same people that keep treating you badly because you think you deserve that God has such bigger plans for you. Like when I wake up to my husband every day, I'm so thankful. Every night when I go to sleep, I'm so thankful, because he shows me so much love. And I feel like for every broken, abusive relationship I went through, God has given me tenfold back in this man who treats me this way. So I just want to say that. I want to say, if you're listening and you just feel like your marriage is falling apart, it might be you that's blocking that story that you know you need to let out, or it could be your spouse or your person that you're with, and they're not meaning to hurt you, but it's just they've been hurt and they don't know how to deal with that.
You're so right. It's one area where we don't have the words.
Yeah.
Still live in silence, and we misunderstand what it's all about, you know. And I often liken it to, we sit, you know, in the middle of a circle of all the people we love, thinking that they aren't loving us the way we need to be loved. And yet in my vision of this, everybody's actually holding a mirror, and they're reflecting back what we feel towards ourselves.
Oh, so good.
And that is an incredible love story. That has to be at some point, Jody, because that is just such a beautiful story, and such a powerful testimony to your ability to surrender and take the risk of loving, because that was not without a lot of risk after the horror that you had been through so many times.
Yeah, it was a choice I had to make. Was I going to continue to let the enemy run my life and convince me that I wasn't worthy of true love, or was I going to give it all to God and really experience true love?
Yes. Yes. Wow, that gives me chills. Incredible. Incredible.
Oh, girl. Okay, well, our time is up. I love you so much,
I
and
love you, Jody.
I just, like I said, you just make my heart so full, and you're so educated and you're so knowledgeable on so many topics. And so we're going to list every way that everyone can get in touch with you, how they can coach with you, how they can follow you. You can be on her email list. She gives amazing emails out, just to let you know you're not alone, just to let you know that whatever it is that you may have been through, that God already knows, and he's taking you somewhere else, and he will open doors of opportunity to people to help you get there. So thank you, Amy. Any final words that you want to say before we go?
Well, I am so thankful to God and Tim Story, our beloved Tim,
Yes, shout out to Tim's story.
for connecting me to you, because you are such a gift in my life, Jody. And I can't wait to see where God takes your heart and your ministry, because it is so powerful and so needed. And I'm here to support you in any way that I can. And I'm here to support anyone who listens or watches this, because that's my whole heart too. So I am totally humbled by this, and I have just loved being here. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And guys, thank you so much for watching. I love all of you. You're my family. I pray that whatever it is you're going through, give it to God. He will turn it around. I promise you that. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.